Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TrailBlazers podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler and Dave. And on today's episode, Tyler, would you mind giving us an intro on who the guest is?
So on today's episode, we had Rahul Ravin, and this is a mechanical engineering alumni from the University of Alberta who worked at Nova Chemicals for a while, but then decided he was more interested in the space industry and is now taking a master's at the University of Toronto, where he builds and designs satellites full time. So pretty interesting. So he told us a bit about that journey, how he made that decision, and kind of what his day-to-day looks like now. So I don't know. Yeah, Dave, what did you think of the interview with Rahul?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I like some of his aspects that he was talking about. You know, he worked for a couple of years out of school to begin with, had a good, well-paying full-time job, but he always sort of knew that there was something in, the back of his mind that was sort of ticking and he wanted to go explore. And so I really appreciate his, willingness to leave a comfy situation, go sort of explore the unknown, go explore space and satellites. As well, too, one thing that I found kind of interesting is he talked about in his bachelor's, and I think now in his master's, he participated in a lot of different conferences, which is something that I don't know if a lot of us actually explore, but sort of mentioning for him, like learning a lot, getting to build a bit of a network out of that and helping him understand what he found passion in. So yeah, I found that really interesting. Any other things you want to add on to that, Tyler?
Just, yeah, if anybody's wondering out there about work-life balance or school-life balance, and you see the stories at the high level of these people like Rahul that looks like they do so much, he speaks a lot about how he kind of keeps that balance in his life and how he makes sure he doesn't work too much every week and kind of makes time for what's important. So for some tips on that as well, make sure you listen to him. So without further ado, over to the episode. And while you're at it, make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit us up on social media and everything. Smash that like, as Dave would say.
Smash it, yep.
And yeah, over to Rahul.
Do you want to tell us a little about that thought process of you going back for the master's degree?
To give the full picture, I'll kind of have to roll back to, university, because the sort of, the seed for that idea to go get a master's sort of started there. I'd always wanted to work with, like aviation and airplanes and that kind of thing growing up. And in university, when I went and joined and started doing mechanical engineering, I was sort of, that idea was firmly implanted in my head that, I have to do aviation, and like it's achievable. You can do it in Canada. I didn't really think I was gonna do a master's. I just thought, I'll graduate undergrad and then I'll just apply to people who are doing stuff with planes. That evolved into me discovering space and how much cooler it was than aviation. Sorry to all the aviation people out there listening to this.
I'm on your side, Rahul. Don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah, I did a couple of projects related to space, and then I had this idea that I can definitely do space when I graduate. And being in Alberta and graduating from an Albertan university, the job offers that come to you are from industries that are firmly rooted in Alberta, such as petrochemicals. So since I had experience in things like in my co-ops and stuff, and like plants, manufacturing plants and that kind of thing, pulp mills, I took this offer from a petrochemical plant. And I sort of put the aerospace space dream to rest aside for a while. But it was still in the back of my mind. And, I found myself registering for conferences like IAC. I went to, which is the International Astronautical Conference. And it sort of led to me, going to these things and still staying involved in the aerospace community at the U of A. It's sort of made that feeling stronger that, hey, doing something in space is achievable. Even though I'm working in a completely different field, that it's possible in Canada. And so, I That the idea grew the strongest when I was at IAC in Washington. I was literally in a room with Neil Armstrong. Sorry, Buzz Aldrin. Neil Armstrong passed away. So I was at IAC in a
It's all
room
good.
in a room with Buzz Aldrin, and that sort of woke something up in me, like this is real. Like, people went to the moon, and people are actively working on space just across the border and within Canada. And so I started writing the application for grad school, like right from the hotel room. And sorry, there's a siren in the background if you can't hear it.
Oh, it's all good. No worries.
Okay. So that was a really long-winded answer, but it was like this idea that was there, and then it grew stronger through my experiences. And then while I was working, I decided that I'm only young once, and I'll only have this level of independence once. So I took this leap of faith and said, hey, let's see if I can do it, and let's show myself that I can do it.
Rock and roll, man. I love that. That's awesome. So I'm interested more in now hearing the end of that story, not the end, or where you are now, because you applied to grad school. And I have an idea of what you do because I'm familiar with the space industry as well, but I think it'd be really valuable for people to hear what your day-to-day is like and the type of experiments you're involved in and the type of work you do, because it is very cool stuff. So maybe give us a bit of an overview of what that looks like, because I know you're involved with SFL, right? So maybe you could speak a little bit about that. And I know you recently did a reduced gravity experiment because of your involvement in the space sector. So a lot of cool opportunity has come from, taking that route for that master's.
Just a really quick question. What's SFL for anybody listening who doesn't know what SFL is?
That is a space flight laboratory at the University of Toronto. Okay. And they do a lot of big missions for satellite enterprises across the globe.
Okay, awesome. And Rahul, to you, sorry.
Okay. SFL, Spaceflight Laboratory. It's funny because our slogan right now is small satellites, big returns. So they're small missions. They're a laboratory at the University of Toronto, and like when I was picking, scrolling through the list of laboratories of research at the University of Toronto, like this is the one that really stood out to me because this laboratory, it's more like a company. We build satellites for real customers, and they're built in a 2-year time frame, which is the time it takes to get a master's degree. So students, when they come in, they get to build a satellite from scratch, essentially starting from the requirements, designing the satellite, validating that design, going through your design reviews like PDR and CDR. And then finally you build it, you test it, take it through vibration testing, thermal vacuum testing, systems tests, and then finally you ship it off to your launch provider. And so as a mechanical engineer, I really wanted to dive deep into what a mechanical engineer could do. So things like thermal, structural, and assembly. And so right now, that's what I'm doing. And how do I put the day-to-day of it in a concise manner? Because I do so many different things that all sort of come together into this final product, but it's also a team effort. So I guess when I started, I got assigned to 2 missions, and I can't really say what they are. There's some stuff I can say, and some stuff I'm not allowed to say. So I'm gonna try and censor myself the best as I can. 2 missions. One was Earth observation. The other was this radio frequency, listening mission. And so for one of them, I sort of came in right after PDR and did some design work to get the design up to a CDR level, and as of late, this summer we started we ordered parts and we started actually putting the satellite together, and that's where we are right now. And that's half my time. The other half of my time is split between this other mission where we're doing a similar thing. But I started much earlier in the process, so I got to read the requirements and actually design parts from scratch. And right now we're going through, we're also building this mission. So I'm in the middle of building 2 missions, and on the side I do some structural analysis for pieces and some thermal. So it's I'm being pulled in 4 different directions, and it's a lot of fun. And I guess you asked about how my summer went. So summer in Toronto is pretty fantastic. The weather is a lot nicer than Edmonton. Some might even say too hot. But like nobody here will tell you that. It's just the Albertan transplants that will tell you that. So for me, I like work-life balance is really important to me. So, yes, I could have kept working long hours at the lab, but I really did make sure that I worked my 40 hours. I got out of the lab, I saw the city, and that I was also like involved in other things, extracurriculars, extracurricular projects, such as CanRGX. So CanRGX, for those of you that don't know, is the Canadian Reduced Gravity Experiment Design Challenge. I think is the full
Congrats
name.
on remembering that. I can never remember that acronym.
And this is organized by SEDS Canada, which is Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. It's a student group, student network, rather, across Canada that seeks to connect students with the aerospace industry. So they run challenges like this. They have a conference in spring every year. I've done a challenge with them similar to this in undergrad. I'd also been to their conferences a couple of times. And with that experience, some of my friends asked me if I wanted to mentor them for their challenge, which was the reduced gravity experiment. And so the experiment was looking at how human cartilage tissue behaves in microgravity, and specifically how it behaves, or what the differences are in male and female cartilage cells. So there are several ways you can study cartilage. Like, hey, you can send bioengineered tissues up to the space station. You can study a live person, but taking like a biopsy sample might be really painful and an invasive procedure. So a non-invasive way of studying it is to grow your cartilage in the lab and maybe fly it in microgravity a few times. So our hypothesis was that you could actually see a change in 20 seconds of microgravity exposure versus sending cartilage samples to the space station for 6 months. So it really makes your science a lot cheaper, because microgravity using a plane, of course, is much more achievable and accessible to a typical laboratory than sending kilograms up to the space station. So anyway, they flew us down to Ottawa, and we were at the NRC's Flight Research Lab, and they had this business jet that was converted to a roller coaster in the sky, a microgravity jet. So we had 2 people from our team go up, test these samples, and right now we're working on analyzing on analyzing the samples and seeing if we actually can pick up any difference between the samples from when they were on the ground and after the flight.
Sounds awesome. I think it's really interesting work, and it's great that basically you guys are also getting support from the Canadian level too to go and do this kind of like research right now, because I know like this industry is growing really, really quickly, and say like any type of research and development that can kind of come from like a federal or even a provincial level will help like speed that up quite quickly. So it's good to see. Although, okay, so we were just talking about a very technical tangent. I actually want to go to like a less technical tangent because I think a lot of young engineers probably aren't doing, or maybe they're trying to work on this, but it's actually work-life balance. And you talked a little bit about that. And especially as a master's student, finding work-life balance can be very challenging. Like I can even, speak a little bit on my experiences. I remember days I was at my lab at like, my lab, I don't actually do experiments, but I just coded stuff at like 6 in the morning, right? And like some days I'd be there until like 1 a.m. at night, And like I would only do that when it was absolutely necessary, but it did happen. So, I'm kind of wondering for yourself is like, how did you find kind of like a hypothesis for like how many hours a week you wanted to work? And then how do you try to like keep yourself accountable to staying within that like amount of time you allocate? And then the last question I want to ask with this is like, have you noticed any positive benefits, maybe to say your like physical or mental health with sort of like staying within that time frame?
Right. So I think my answer is that maybe I'm just lazy, so it's a lot easier to put a cutoff time on the amount of hours you work. But really, what I want to say is, and this is like my deepest, darkest thoughts, is like I really firmly believe that like you work to live, and that you don't live to work. So work is there to sustain uh, my life as well. I guess work is there to, I guess, stimulate me mentally, right? So uh, to me, I just never saw the point of having work be the overarching thing that you do for 50% of your waking life. Like, there's 24 hours in a day, you spend 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours working, and then you have your other 8 hours. Is how I see it. And so for me, when I look at it that way, it's a lot easier to be disciplined about how many hours I work. And because I do that, like I can say, oh yeah, I'm going home at 5:30 today. So that helps me be more productive at work, because then I'll be forced to think a lot more about, yeah, okay, I'm limiting how much time I spend at work. I need to really think about what I'll achieve at work. So I do go home feeling satisfied, and then once I'm home, I can do whatever else I want with my life. But it is a challenge. But it kind of helps having worked in an industry that was so chill, like petrochemicals, where you get used to the habit. And so advice to up and coming engineers out there that are about to graduate: go work first before you take a master's, because it will sort of plant good habits in you and like teach you what you like and what you don't like, and then you can take those to be more productive in your master's. And there was another
really
half
good
of your
advice.
question.
I dig that.
Thank you. There was another half of your question that I missed.
I think it was just like, do you notice any like positive benefits to your like physical or mental health, like by having that work-life balance?
Okay, that's a fantastic question, and I'm really glad you asked it, because the timing of that with COVID and everything is perfect. I did find that when we were in lockdown, like I would work more, and part of the reason was that on top of doing lab work, I was taking coursework. So it felt like I was in undergrad again, because I'd be going to bed late, and waking up early and right back in the grind again. But that, like, I finished my courses in April, and then summer came around, so that's where I was able to be more disciplined, and for sure, mentally, like, I definitely feel a lot more balanced. Like, I don't feel stressed. Um, and I discovered things about myself, which, like, for instance, I have time to bike to work in the mornings, and, like, leave in the evenings before it gets dark, and this sort of feeds in to the mental health, because, like, biking, also, like, I guess I get some cardio in, and it also, like, feeds in towards better mental health. So, like, it's positive effects overall with maintaining that balance, maintaining a balanced set of work hours.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something that I think I realize when I have better work-life balance too is that, yeah, definitely the hours you spend at work are more enjoyable and better. And I think there's always this fallacy or tendency that if I work longer hours and get one more thing done, I'll feel better. But I think anybody that's worked, the 60-hour week knows that that week is just as stressful, if not more stressful, than the 40-hour week, because there's always something else to do. And then you haven't rested enough and taken that time to kind of decompress. So I would definitely advocate for that as well. But I would also ask another question from your time in university, and it's kind of related to this work-life balance a little bit, because I'm always confused about how to give this advice, because I know it's important for students to be involved in extracurricular projects or student-led projects, because it gives you, I feel like, a lot of definition and a lot of information for what you want to do after you graduate. But again, that's spending more time outside of your classes in the domain of engineering. So it could kind of hamper that work-life balance if you're in university. Now, I know you were involved in a number of student-led projects. I believe it was the Aero group and the U Alberta Space Design group, if I remember correctly. What would be your advice on students getting involved in student-led projects outside of the classroom? What are some of the benefits, and how can they, make the most of that experience in their career going forward?
Yeah, for sure. So my view on work-life balance very much changed through undergrad to, graduation and into master's. I was listening intently, but I completely forgot the question. Could I have that again?
Just just in general, what would your thoughts be on students getting involved in extracurricular projects outside of the classroom, and how can that impact their career going forward? And to that, just what are your thoughts on students getting involved in those types of projects, and how has it impacted you personally?
Okay, yeah, totally fair. It's, for me, looking back, and I would never really have known this when I was in first year, but looking back, I think extracurriculars really helped jumpstart my career and show that I was really into engineering I was in engineering because I was interested in it genuinely. And so showing my, I guess there's like 2 or 3 different angles I could take on this. One is that having extracurriculars on my resume definitely helped me get internships because it showed employers that I would want to be there at whatever workplace they were hiring for because I wanted to learn, and that's really what they're after: people who are teachable, who are willing to absorb that knowledge. Secondly, it helped me build confidence in my own abilities, and I guess when you start out, like, when I was in second year, I joined the Aero Heavy Lift group, and we built model remote controlled aircraft. And I didn't really have skills coming in, but I learned a lot of things in my 4 years with the group, in my 3.5 years with the group. Things like solid modeling, computational fluid dynamics. I learned those things like way before I took the course. How to, put something together, and, like how to put a plane together and fly it for competition, how to work with materials, and you're making engineering decisions. You're working with teams, and you're getting a taste of what it's like to be out in the workforce. And you're building up that confidence that, hey, I can learn things, I can be a part of the team, and I can make these decisions because I've seen things like this before. So, anyone who's considering going into engineering, or who's already there and considering going into a student group, I highly recommend it. I also made like most of my friends in undergrad from these groups, and like they're still the people I keep in touch with. So another plus point there. And I guess going into my career and into my master's, these things helped. Like, for instance, I had my space design group experience, and I guess to give an overview of what that is, space design group was a student group I started because I wanted to do something spacey. And so I joined the SEDS Canada Stratospheric Balloon Experiment Design Challenge. Again, a long name that I managed to remember. And so yeah, we designed this experiment to go into the stratosphere and study aerosols. And this was sort of my first taste of working with the space industry. So the people organizing the challenge, in addition to SEDS, we had CSA, and we also had people from the French space agency, CNES, who helped us with integrating our payload onto the balloon. And it really solidified the idea that, hey, there were space things happening in Canada, and that these are real people who I could be working with someday. And so that was like one of the key factors, like being in space design group and doing that challenge, that really, I guess, steered me towards a master's, because that was like my first space experience, and I was hooked. So yeah, no, student groups really did a lot for my career and where I am right now, and I don't regret it. No regrets.
I feel like I can completely agree with your, yeah, no regrets. I feel like I can completely agree with your sentiments towards student groups. Like, I know Tyler spent a ton of time in his undergraduate at Well doing student groups. Similar for me, like especially during my master's, volunteering in student groups at that point too. And yeah, you're super right. Like you meet a lot of really great people. They are also interested, most likely, in the same thing that you're interested in. So you can kind of get deeper and deeper connections in that space. But then as well too, like it's almost a great, like you're sort of saying, it's a great way to showcase to any future employer or any future school that you're willing to kind of go outside of like your maybe like expectations as a student or expectations as a young professional to like get a little bit of a deeper knowledge. And as well too, like you have to take on a lot of responsibility, especially if Rahul, you're mentioning too, you start a student group, right? Especially if you're starting a student group, you have to basically drive that entire group towards some type of like end goal or end outcome that really like you're the one responsible for at that point in time. So I guess we have three advocates here for student groups. We don't have any countering viewpoints, so I guess we're just going to go with that for today. But yeah, so Rahul, with that being said, I know you mentioned basically It sounds like, student groups kind of help impact your why, why space, like why you wanted to choose that for your master's and like your focus going forward. So say like, do you have any advice to students right now who like might be in school, or young professionals who are like kind of trying to find their why, and maybe any like actionable steps that you would recommend taking to kind of figure out some passions and maybe like orient your career towards those?
So my advice would sort of be geared towards undergrads. I'll have to think about what I would say to a high schooler. Um, my advice would be to try something, to try everything. Like I know well, for example, you go to clubs fair at the beginning of the year and you put your name down for like 20 different clubs, and you're on the email list and you go to like maybe one. Um, but if you go and attend like the AGM, the first meeting for at least one club or group, you get to know whether that's something you want to do or not. So the first step is to try, and maybe you won't find something that you like um, right away. So I guess my second piece of advice is like you can start something. Like if you're um, if I say like if you feel about or if you feel a passion for something strong enough, like there are resources out there for you to get funding, to start a group and start doing the thing that you're interested in. For instance, there are student groups that were started at the U of A for robotics, because people found that there weren't enough robotics groups at the university level. And my friend Abby, she started a rocketry group because there wasn't enough rocketry in Edmonton at that scale. And I guess that interest, if you're interested in something and you put yourself out there and you put it out there that you're starting something, you will attract people that also want to do that thing, and you'll build that community. I guess my third piece of advice would be conferences are a great way of figuring out if you're interested in something, especially career wise. So I've gone to conferences in the petrochemical industry, like machinery conferences. I've been to, of course, aerospace conferences in Alberta and Toronto and Washington, and you get to meet not only industry but academia, professors, students, people who worked in the industry for like a year or two, people who've been in it for their entire lives. And conferences are fun, and you get to meet people, and you really get a taste uh, of like many different facets of the industry that the conference is centered around. So, highly recommend. Also, student rates are ridiculously cheap. So if you have a student card, you can get cheap tickets, and every university will have like conference funding that will take care of either the ticket or even travel costs. So in university, I really didn't pay out of pocket for any of my conferences. They were all covered.
That's awesome. Okay, so everybody note that down. If you want to do conferences, probably do them as a student so you won't go broke. And if you're not a student, either hopefully maybe your company will sponsor you, something along those lines. Okay, so I think, yeah. All right, so basically get the company to sponsor you, get the school to sponsor, one of those two choices. Otherwise, hopefully, the pockets are a little bit deeper, but that's all good. Okay, Rahul, I actually wanted to ask a follow-up question on conferences because I'm personally a little bit curious, and also it's not anything we've ever talked about on the podcast before. How do you actually pick a good conference to go and like learn about, and say, how can you get the most about your experience at a conference? Like, is the experience at the conference about like going to seminars? Is it about networking? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So back in undergrad, though I didn't pick conferences, I sort of attended the conferences that were part of the communities that I was in. So, um, with the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, they hosted their conference, which is called Ascension. And because of my involvement, I went to Ascension because I knew there would be more people like that from in that community there. What other ones have I been to? Going to Washington uh, for the IAC conference, I found that because again, similar reasons. Like Alberta Sat was going, and so I looked up the conference, and it was the biggest space conference, or it was billed as the biggest space conference in the world, and it goes around the world. So it was like in Sydney the year before, and it was in Washington this year. So I was like, that's exciting. There will be a global crowd there, and it was big. So I went there. In the master's world, conferences, there's a lot more thought that goes into picking which conference you go to. And we pick smaller conferences that are more focused on what we're doing, and where you can get more into the technical depth of things. So there's a couple of conferences where we submit papers to that I have my eye on. And I guess, what do you do at a conference, and like, how can you get the most out of it? Step one: buy the ticket and show up. That's half the battle, because once you get there, you sort of get swept up in the flow of things. Conferences are a lot of fun. There's a lot of things happening. And usually, hopefully, if you found a conference in the ways I described, because you're part of the community, you're not going to be there alone. You're going to be there with people. So usually, either like, I'll pick up the program and look at sessions that I like, workshops that I like, and I'll build a calendar. This is what I did for IAC in Washington, because there is way more things than one person can attend, because there's multiple, like, concurrent sessions going on. And you can't be in 3 rooms at the same time. There's the Russian rocket engine designer talking about how he designed the latest turbo pump in Hall A, and then there's Buzz Aldrin talking in Hall B, and there's your Canadian peeps talking about their latest small sats in Hall C, and I'm like, I want to go to all these 3 things. They look so cool, but that was one of the dilemmas of going to a big conference, is you can't go to everything, and there's so many cool things happening at the same time. So yeah, pick interesting like workshops or talks that you want to go to. Go to the trade show, and go to the trade shows early. Bigger conferences generally have trade shows. I can't speak for all of them, but if there is a trade show, go to them, and go to them early, because in the earlier days of a conference is when most of the booths are populated, and when the people manning those booths have the most energy and enthusiasm to talk to you. So go to the trade shows, and I would usually just go to the stands with, like, the prettiest looking props or the coolest poster, and I would start talking to people and asking them about, like, hey, I haven't heard of your company before. Can you tell me about it? Or if I'm feeling a little more strategic, I'll research the company. I'll see what their latest what latest news they have, or if they're announcing anything at this conference, like a big contract that they signed, or if they're here because they're working on a big project and they want more people to hear about it. They want investors to hear about it. So I'll go and talk to them and engage them on that kind of topic. And sometimes people at the conferences want to talk to students. Like, for instance, Rocket Lab was hiring engineers and people fresh out of school, and they wanted to talk to anyone who looked, like they were fresh-faced, fresh out of university, and they were encouraging them to apply to their jobs. So, yeah, go to what you're interested in. Talk to people at the trade shows. Look up people on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great resource, especially at conferences, because everyone's posting on LinkedIn. And you'll hear about events, and you'll find the names of interesting people that you might want to talk to, and you can connect with them on LinkedIn. Personally, I haven't done this as much because I'm shy, and I'm not going to be like messaging people and saying, "Hey, I saw you on this post." But that's something I might do later on if I am in a conference and there's someone I really, really do want to talk to.
Right on. I think that's really good advice. You put a lot of thought into how to go to conferences, and not enough people do that. And I feel like a lot of people don't get the most out of conferences that they can, and so that's extremely good advice.
See, I wish I had someone to like tell me that before. Yeah. This is like hard-earned advice, and then I talk to people who already seem to have it figured out, and they'll tell you, yeah, you got to go with a strategy, and you have to, So yeah, for sure. That's all I got.
Yeah, no.
We got the strategy for everybody now. Sorry, Tyler. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, you gotta like, I'm not gonna say waste, but do a few conferences where you just don't do anything to figure that out. That a strategy is good here, especially when you're going on the university's dime too. That's the best time when you're a student is to go with a good strategy. So, we've heard a lot about your story so far. You've clearly, the decision that you made was the right one. You love what you do. You love the space industry, and you're in it now. And now, so this podcast isn't only for students in university; it's also for other young professionals to kind of learn from each other. I know I learn from every single one of our guests. I've learned a lot from you already. There might be some young professionals that are also in the position that you found yourself in, where you're at your job in, say, the oil and gas industry, and you're earning a good salary. And it seems like a lot of risk to take that leap to go back for a master's, to try to enter into a completely different domain, and maybe give up some financial security and move somewhere else. There's a lot of hesitancy there, even if that's kind of what you want to do. To the people that are kind of scared to take that step, to take that risk, and find themselves in that position, what would you say to them?
First, I'll tell you, I was very scared taking that leap of faith, quitting my well-paying job to go be a student again. And so it doesn't come easy. So I guess one of those triggers for me was, again, my firm belief in work-life balance, in that if you're spending a third of your waking hours, at least during the work week, at your job, it might as well be something that's intellectually stimulating, that keeps you there, that you really want to be doing, and like that fuels that fire in you. So yeah, for me, I guess I had to take the leap of faith of applying to the master's in the first place, Well, I guess that wasn't as much of a leap of faith as it was, okay, let's give this a shot and see if I get a response, and see if I can do it, to show myself that I could at least get a response from university. So way before, while I was still working, I did a lot of research to that's how engineers think. We try to minimize risk by doing more research, collecting more data. So that fall, I was researching universities. I looked at University of Toronto, a couple of universities in the States, a couple in Canada, in addition to Toronto, because I kind of didn't want to move outside of Canada. And I also looked at TU Delft, because I heard that they had a good small cap program. So eventually, I settled on University of Toronto and Delft, and I applied to both. And I said, okay, let's see where this goes. And I got a rejection from Delft, which was the first response that came in, and that was crushing, because I'm like, oh man, I am stuck in my industry forever. And then a couple of months later, the U of T response came, and they said, hell yeah, you're in. Welcome to your MASC degree. And so yeah, at that point, I had to make a decision really quick. And I talked to my family and I talked to my friends, and ultimately what won over was that, again, I said this little soundbite earlier, which is, you're young once, I'm young once, I'm only independent once, and I will never really have this opportunity to see where it goes later in life. Like if I'm tied down with a family, like not tied down, but you have your responsibility to your families. If you're settled down, you have a mortgage or something, it's a lot harder to make that decision. Right now I had very little expenses, very little reason I had to be in Red Deer where I was working at the time, except, my job. So I said, let's see where this goes. If I don't like it, I could, I have a fallback plan. I have a degree. So I'm doing the calculus in my head, reducing the risk. And I said, okay, you know what? I'll pull the trigger. I'll do it. I'll go. And so I accepted that offer. So I guess my parting words on that topic would be that, do your research, but also stay true to yourself. Listen to what you want to do, because if that's what you're going to be spending most of your time doing at work, make it count.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. And I think that's absolutely timely and good advice for a lot of people. And I think it's some beautiful advice for us to wrap up on, Rahul. That was a lot of wisdom you gave. Thank you for sharing your story today. There's a lot of people that are interested in getting into the space domain. So if they follow your path that you've described very well here, I have no doubt that they'll find themselves working in space one day. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Rahul.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Just jump into really fast. Yeah, totally. I'll just jump in really fast too. I kind of want to just add on Tyler's point there about what you just said too. I think it's kind of the perfect thing to think about, right? Because even Tyler, I know you went abroad to work, right? And I did the same as well too. And Rahul, what you're saying is you're only young once, you only have this, opportunity, probably minimizing risk, right? Like you say, engineers, we're minimizing the risk, right? We have this opportunity to minimize our risk right now. And I think it's with that mentality in mind is, I sometimes talk to some friends who are say 2 or 3 years out of school. It's oh, I already have so many responsibilities and I'm so, so old. It's just you can still just go for it, right? And it's what's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe you figure out you love the space industry and now that's going to be your career, right? So it's a good thing for, anybody who's considering it right now. And I think the advice you just gave there is perfect. So yeah, I also want to just thank you too for coming on the show. It's been awesome chatting with you, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to maybe meet in person sometime in the future too, and to pick your brain more.
For sure. Yeah, it was lovely being on the show. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. So that was Rahul's episode. Thanks for listening. If you made it to this point so far, I'm just going to throw on a quick like and subscribe right now. Why not? Anyways, Tyler, what do you think about the episode?
I thought it was awesome. Rahul has a really interesting path. I was particularly interested in hearing him talk about how he made the decision to, leave his job at Nova Chemicals and then pursue his interest in the space industry, and how that came about from going to lots of conferences. And he specifically talked about the time he was at IAC, and there's like those 3 talks going on at the same time, and they're all so interesting. It's like, which one do I go to? Mm-hmm. And, events like that made him realize that, this was the industry that he actually wanted to be into. So that's a hard decision to make, but he made it. I know lots of people out there would like to have the courage to do the same thing, or kind of think that they might want to do the same thing. So I felt like Rahul's story was really beneficial for that, because you can tell he is very satisfied and happy with where he's at today. So hats off to him. I thought it was a great interview. What were your takeaways, Dave?
Yeah. Also really like you sharing that story, Tyler. I think some of the things that are important that he brought out that maybe some of us can think about or work on, one would be like the work-life balance aspect. Like it sounds like basically he has his like amount of hours that he works, and as soon as that's hit, he's like, right. Whereas I think like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know from your aspect, Tyler. Like, I think for me, like I try to do that for the most part, but I mean, I'll still like, if there's some pressing thing or like, a demand or whatever, like I'm usually going to like kind of see it through. So I felt like that's kind of interesting, something that I'll think a little bit more on going forward. Couple other things was the conference portion. Like for my industry, kind of like tech or whatever, like a lot of people will go to conferences, a lot of people participate in conferences. I kind of want to see a little bit more on that side, if there's something I can take from Rahul's book and learn a little bit more about. So yeah, I found kind of the conference piece a little bit interesting. And the last thing that was cool is basically his willingness to kind of leave a comfy situation and go, leave a well-paid full-time job and go back to school for a master's degree. I really respect that decision, and it takes some guts, because you're going back to kind of that unknown situation. But it sounds like, he feels for himself he made the right decision, and we totally support him in that as well. Anything else you got in your mind, Tyler, or is that pretty much good on your end too?
I think that sums it up. It was really great. He gives some really tangible advice on the space industry in general. So anybody that's actually interested in that field and wants to get into the space industry, of course, I'm interested in it as well. Make sure you listen to him for that, because it was a good one. So with that, I think all I'll say is, again, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment. Maybe suggest somebody that you'd like to see on the show, and we will catch all of you guys next time.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you.